Hello to anybody and everybody who has found the video. Today here on Brighter Life, we're going to be talking about how a suicide hotline works and sort of the process you go to when you try to contact a suicide hotline and sort of what they do for you, and then give you some sort of funding info and stats here at the end. But let's start off by saying there's multiple different ways to be able to contact the suicide hotline. There's a toll-free call, there's an emailing system you can do, there's a text messaging system you can do, which is like an interface in between them, and then there's also an online chat that they usually do through their website. All of them are confidential and they'll all be private, just between you and the person you're talking with. And most of the time, the people you'll talk with, it's site or company or foundation or something like that. It's either going to be a volunteer status that they're working with, or there will be a trained staff member that they'll have that will be sort of in the near center towards you. So they'll be working near you, so they'll be able to understand sort of where you are, sort of your demographic, and sort of understand a lot more about your external factors that could lead you to be in this sort of mental health scenario. There are also other lines that'll be specific. If it's not just a crisis hotline, it'll be a LGBTQ plus hotline you can contact, or there's ones for veterans when there's different crisis lines for those two sects specifically that I know of. There might be a few others that are like either like race or ethnicity based background sort of hotlines you can contact, or something more along the lines of just like an overarching online chat you can do with someone from anywhere in your country that just sort of, it's more of a general idea, it's not specific to you. That sometimes happens. So what happens when you contact the suicide hotline is your call will be received and then redirected to either a central location of that website or that company or foundation or whatever, like I had said before, and then it'll either direct you to their central location or a location that's nearest to you. Again, part of that figuring out your external factors that could lead you into being in that crisis. And then there's sort of music that they'll play as someone is like waiting to pick up the call that you had placed, or someone in the chat center that's waiting to receive and start the chat box with you. And it's all sort of just like a waiting process to begin that verbal or online verbal session where you just sort of figure out a few general questions about you, and then sort of figure out what danger level you're in, sort of what is in your mind at the moment, and if you are like persistent about self-harming or committing suicide, there's often a lot more steps they will take to either have the police, and if they don't need to contact the police because they don't feel you are in that great of a danger, or they work with you and you've calmed down, or you've realized like you shouldn't commit suicide, or you aren't going to commit any self-harm in that time frame afterwards, then they'll oftentimes just leave you with information and services you can take to get treatment for what you're going through, and sort of that mental illness bridge into recovery. And that's mostly what they'll try to do, is after they figure out your danger level and all the questions about you, and they figure out towards the end of when you're chatting or calling that you're either safe or will be safe, then they try and give you that information to make sure that this doesn't become a reoccurring thing or something that you have to rely on often. As I said before, the police can be contacted, and sort of what happens when they contact the police is they just feel they can't do enough in their position to help you out, and so they work to send the services over to work more in person with you than they could online or over the phone or something like that, just to make sure that you don't follow through with a suicide, or that you don't go into a path where you are going to commit suicide or any self-harm act in the end. In my experiences with contacting one, it was like a wait time of 30 odd plus minutes to wait there, and I'd basically just given up on that service and just sort of had to find my own way out of what I was feeling at that moment. And so I feel there should just be a lot more volunteers that they can try and find, or if they have a lot more staff, it would just help them that much more to create a lot more open chats and phone calls that they can make with people who are in need at that time. Some of the stats about the suicide hotline here we have at the end is that 12% of callers who have like left their feedback or whatever have said that it has stopped them in that moment from committing suicide. Nearly 50% of the people who do call take the recommended services that they had received from the person who was chatting with them or calling with them, and they went on and to the path that would lead them to recovery after hearing about those resources that they had told them. So the resources they're telling them obviously give the people enough hope and strength to go in and try and get that help that they want for themselves. Lastly, the last stat I have here is that about 80% of callers say that the call or the chat in some fashion saved their life in a multitude or a range of importance to that person. You can't really determine that, but if 80% of people who are, say, like after they called, that it saved their life in one way or another, or that the call was a factor in them staying alive, these suicide hotlines obviously do have a lot of a bigger impact than they are being given, and I feel there's a lot more they can do to be more well funded if we just start talking more about how much more necessary these things should be and getting the conversation going to get a lot more of these resources put in place for us to be able to keep everyone safe, especially in the moments when they need it most. We will give them the resources they really need, especially given how I shared that it was going to be a 30-minute wait before I would have been able to chat with someone. And so I feel obviously strongly, having gone through it and experiencing sort of what they can do, I feel strongly that there's a lot of good that obviously comes out of them, but also a lot more that could be done to help them even more. And so that's where we're going to leave it off for today. I hope you guys have learned something, or you can take this information and sort of help realize that there shouldn't be as big of a stigma around contacting a suicide hotline, because they do a lot of great work and they're a great resource for people who are in a crisis or are in need. And I hope more people do reach out to them, and I hope more people are going to be able to be saved from us sort of breaking down this stuff today. And I will see you guys in a future video. Thank you.